They tell us a simple story, a neat little package tied with a bow. It's April 30th, 1945. The Red Army is breathing down the neck of Berlin. The Third Reich, a supposed 1,000-year empire, is crumbling into dust after just 12 years. Down in his concrete tomb, the Führer bunker, Adolf Hitler knows the game is up. He's cornered like a rat. So what does he do? He takes the easy way out. He bites down on a cyanide capsule and just to be sure puts a Walther PPK to his right temple and pulls the trigger. It's a clean ending to a dirty war. That's what they want you to believe anyway. His new wife, Eva Braun, joins him in death, choosing only the poison. Their loyal followers, we're told, then take their bodies up to the Reich Chancellery Garden. They douse them in petrol and set them ablaze. A makeshift funeral pyre for the most hated man in the world. The Soviets roll in, find the charred remains, and that's that. Case closed. The monster is dead. The world can breathe a sigh of relief and start rebuilding. It's the version you'll find in every history book, taught in every classroom. But I've learned one thing over the years. When the official story is that clean, that perfect, you better start digging, because the truth is almost never that simple. Look, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying, where's the proof? The kind of proof that stands up in court. The kind of proof that doesn't leave you with more questions than answers. They want you to accept it on faith. They want you to trust the same governments that have lied to us time and time again. We're supposed to believe that in the middle of the most chaotic battle of the 20th century, with shells raining down and the world ending around them, they managed to pull off this perfect little suicide pact and cremation without a hitch. It all just sounds too convenient, doesn't it? A tidy end to a very messy chapter of history. Think about it. Hitler was a master of deception. His entire regime was built on propaganda, on the big lie. He fooled a whole nation. He fooled the world. Are we supposed to believe that his final act wasn't his greatest deception of all? He knew the Allies wanted him. He knew what was coming. Was he the type to just give up? Or was he the type to have a backup plan? A plan B? An escape hatch? The official narrative closes the book on Hitler. But for some of us, that's exactly where the real story begins. The story they don't want you to hear. So let's start poking holes in this official story. Right from the get-go, the accounts don't line up. Eyewitnesses, the ones who were actually in the bunker, couldn't agree on the details. Some said Hitler shot himself through the mouth. Others said it was the temple. Some heard a gunshot, others didn't. You've got SS officer Otto Gunsche, Hitler's adjutant, who claimed he saw the immediate aftermath. But his story changed during interrogations. When you've got multiple witnesses in the same small space who can't agree on the most basic facts of the event, you have to ask yourself, what are they hiding? Are they confused, or are they covering something up? Then there's the physical evidence, or should I say the lack of it. The Soviets claimed they found a jawbone fragment and a piece of a skull with a bullet hole. For decades, this was their smoking gun. This was the proof. But here's the kicker. In 2009, American researchers were allowed to test that skull fragment. The results? It didn't belong to Hitler. It belonged to a woman, likely under the age of 40. Let that sink in. The key piece of evidence held by the Russians for over 60 years, the very thing that proved the suicide story, was a complete fake. A fraud. So if the skull isn't his, what else are they lying about? The whole scene in the garden is suspect. They supposedly burned the bodies with about 200 liters of petrol. You talk to any forensics expert, and they'll tell you that's not nearly enough to cremate 2 adult bodies to the point of near unrecognizability. An open-air fire just doesn't get hot enough. You'd be left with significant remains, not just a few charred bits and a jawbone. And where are the photos? The Soviets were meticulous record keepers. They photographed everything. Yet there are no definitive, undisputed photos of Hitler's corpse. Only blurry, questionable images of the supposed remains. It's a crime scene with no body, a faulty weapon, and contradictory witnesses. And what about Joseph Stalin, the guy whose army supposedly found the body? He never bought the story. Publicly, he told everyone Hitler was gone. But privately, behind closed doors with Allied leaders, he repeatedly said he believed Hitler had escaped. He thought Hitler was alive and well, probably hiding in Spain or Argentina, being protected by fascists. Now, why would the leader of the Soviet Union, the man who had every reason to want Hitler dead and gone, secretly believe he got away? Maybe because he saw the same evidence we're seeing now. Maybe he knew the body they found wasn't the real deal. If Hitler didn't die in that bunker, then where did he go? The most persistent theory, the one that keeps coming up, points south. Way south. To South America, specifically Argentina. This wasn't some wild fantasy. We know for a fact that thousands of high-ranking Nazis used escape routes called rat lines to flee Europe after the war. These weren't guys just hopping on a freighter. These were organized, well-funded operations, often with help from sympathizers inside governments and even the Vatican. They smuggled out monsters like Adolf Eichmann and Josef Mengele. So, I ask you, if they could get those guys out, why not the big boss himself? The story goes that on April 28th or 29th, just before Berlin fell, Hitler and a small group of loyalists were slipped out of the city. Some say by air, using one of the last flyable runways. Others say through a series of secret tunnels leading to a rendezvous point. From there, they made their way to a German U-boat waiting off the coast of Denmark or Spain. We have records of German submarines surrendering in Argentina months after the war ended. Months. What were they doing out there for so long? The official line is they were just lost at sea. Lost? Or were they completing one final, top-secret mission, delivering precious cargo to a safe haven? Once in Argentina, the trail is littered with compelling breadcrumbs. There are entire towns in the foothills of the Andes, like Bariloche, that look like they were plucked straight out of Bavaria. They became havens for ex-Nazis. Eyewitnesses have come forward over the years claiming they saw Hitler there. A gardener, a hotel worker, a waitress. One man, Hermann Gutermann, claimed he delivered goods to Hitler's secluded ranch regularly until his death in the early 1960s. These stories are often dismissed as hearsay, but when you have dozens of them, all telling a similar story, all pointing to the same place, you have to start wondering if it's more than just a coincidence. Think about the politics of it. Argentina, under President Juan Perón, was openly sympathetic to the Nazi cause. Perón rolled out the welcome mat for them. It was the perfect place to disappear. A remote, protected compound surrounded by loyal followers, with a friendly government looking the other way. He could have lived out his days in quiet retirement, pulling strings from the shadows. The official story says he died a coward's death in a bunker. This alternative suggests he pulled off the ultimate escape, dying of old age in the Andes, having cheated justice. Which story seems more plausible for a man who conned the world? You don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to listen to the whispers from some village in the Andes. Let's look at what the government itself has been hiding. For decades, intelligence agencies like the FBI and the CIA kept their files on Hitler's supposed survival under lock and key. Top secret, classified. Why? If he was dead, what was there to hide? But thanks to the Freedom of Information Act, some of these documents have finally seen the light of day. And what they reveal is explosive. They show that our own government was taking the possibility of Hitler's escape very, very seriously for years after the war. One declassified FBI file, dated August 1945, is a bombshell. It details a report from an informant who claimed to have helped Hitler land in Argentina via submarine. The file provides specific details, the names of the Argentinian officials who met him, the ranch he was taken to in the Andes, and even a physical description of a post-war Hitler, clean-shaven and suffering from asthma. The FBI didn't just dismiss it, they investigated it. The file is thick with memos and correspondence. They were actively looking into this. If it was such a crackpot theory, why devote so much time and resources to it? Because they knew it was possible. It wasn't just the FBI, the CIA had its own files. One document from 1955 includes a photograph and a sworn statement from a former SS trooper named Philip Citroen. He claimed to have met with Hitler in Colombia in 1954, a full 9 years after his supposed death. The man in the photo, identified as Adolf Schüttelmeier, bears a striking resemblance to the Führer. The CIA agent who received the report noted that neither his station nor the agency was in a position to give an intelligent evaluation of the information, but it was being passed along as of possible interest. Possible interest? This should have been front-page news. These documents paint a clear picture. While the government was telling the public, "Don't worry, he's dead," they were privately chasing leads all over South America. J. Edgar Hoover, the legendary head of the FBI, kept his Hitler file open until he died. He was never fully convinced. These aren't conspiracy theorists writing on the internet. This is our own intelligence community, admitting, in their own words, that they had credible information suggesting the world's most wanted man might have slipped through their fingers. The question is, why did they stop looking? Or did they just stop telling us about it? Let's go back to the bunker, to the bodies. We've already established the skull fragment was a fake, but what about the rest of it? The Soviets claimed they performed an autopsy on a body they believed to be Hitler's. They took dental records from his assistant and matched them to a jawbone found in the garden. This jawbone became the cornerstone of their proof. But here's the twist. How do we know those dental records weren't faked? How do we know the jawbone wasn't planted? In the chaos of a conquered Berlin with the Soviets in control of the scene, anything was possible. They had the means, the motive, and the opportunity to fabricate the entire event. This brings us to one of the most intriguing parts of the puzzle, the use of political decoys or doppelgangers. The Nazis were obsessed with security and deception. It's well documented that top officials, including Hitler, used body doubles for public appearances to throw off assassins. One of Hitler's main doubles was a man named Gustav Wehler. What if the person who died in that bunker wasn't Hitler at all? What if it was a loyal subordinate, a carefully selected double who played the final part in the Führer's grand escape plan? A man who took a bullet and was burned in the garden to create the perfect illusion. There are reports from Soviet soldiers who first entered the bunker that support this. They found the body of a man who looked remarkably like Hitler, shot in the forehead, lying in the open. This body was even photographed and reported in the press as being Hitler. But then, that story quickly vanished. The body was later identified as a man named Gustav Wehler. The official narrative was changed to the suicide and cremation story. Why the switch? Did they realize they had the wrong man, and then had to scramble to create a new story that fit the evidence they could manufacture from the charred remains? It's a classic bait and switch. You create a crime scene, you plant evidence, you use a body double to sell the lie. It explains the conflicting eyewitness accounts. Some saw the double get shot, while others were part of the inner circle who knew the real Hitler had already left. It explains the lack of a verifiable body, and it explains why the Soviets' key evidence, the skull fragment, turned out to be from a woman. Perhaps it belonged to the body double's female companion, also sacrificed for the cause. The entire official story of Hitler's death could be the greatest magic trick ever performed, with the world as the audience. So where does that leave us? We have an official story that is riddled with holes. We have contradictory eyewitnesses, faked physical evidence like the skull, and a cremation that defies forensic science. We have the private doubts of world leaders like Joseph Stalin. We have declassified government files from the FBI and CIA that show they were seriously investigating Hitler's escape to South America for more than a decade after the war. These aren't just theories. This is documented evidence from the very people who told us he was dead. They were playing both sides of the story. On the other hand, you have the mainstream historians, the academics, the so-called experts. They'll tell you to dismiss all of this. They'll say the jawbone evidence is conclusive. They'll argue that the eyewitness accounts from Argentina are unreliable, that the declassified documents are just agents chasing down dead-end leads, which is their job. They want you to believe that the simplest explanation is the most likely one, that a cornered, defeated Hitler took his own life. They ask you to put your faith in the system, in the official record. But how can we, when the official record has been proven to be based on lies? The trail goes cold in the 1960s, the sightings stop, the reports dry up. If he did escape, he likely died of old age, surrounded by the mountains of Argentina, having never faced a tribunal for his crimes. Maybe the intelligence agencies finally confirmed his death and quietly closed the case to avoid the global embarrassment of admitting they let him get away. Or maybe the truth is buried so deep in classified archives that we'll never know for sure. The powers that be have a vested interest in maintaining the official story. It's neat, it's tidy, and it provides closure. The alternative is messy and disturbing. Ultimately, you have to look at the evidence and decide for yourself. Do you trust the official narrative, a story propped up by evidence that has been exposed as fraudulent and by witnesses who couldn't keep their stories straight? Or do you trust the mountain of circumstantial evidence, the declassified intelligence reports, and the unsettling possibility that the greatest monster of the 20th century pulled off one last great deception? The history books may be closed, but I'm telling you, this case is far from over. The truth is out there. The only question is, do you have the guts to look for it?